In lots of videos, I've told you that the ethnicity results aren't as accurate as you may think they are. And I've given you reasons of why. But can we use those results for some genealogy? Howdy, I'm Andy Lee with Family History Fanatics, and this is a segment of DNA. Today I want to talk about those ethnicity results, those admixture results, and how they can be useful for genealogy. Now, the first thing to understand is because you haven't received all of the DNA from all of your ancestors, any kind of calculation of your ethnicity results based on your DNA are not going to be reflective necessarily of what all of your ancestors are, where they all were from. Now, for most people, if you already have been doing genealogy and you already know a lot of where your ancestors were from in the last 4, 5, or 6 generations, then probably the ethnicity results are not going to be a big surprise, or they may not be telling you the full story of what you already know from the paper trail that you've created. Where ethnicity and admixture results are most useful is in cases where you don't know what your ancestry is. So for instance, adoption cases. Now, some people will say, well, yeah, you can just look in the mirror, and if you're white, you're from Europe, and if you're black, you're from Africa. Except that it's not always that clear cut. Humans across the world have a wide variety of skin tones, hair colors, eye colors, facial features that we've generalized what most of them are for different places around the world, but there is so much overlap that you can't be 100% sure just by looking at somebody. And so in this case, if you are adopted or if you have a relative that's adopted that you have their DNA results, it may be useful for helping you to narrow down where their ancestors, or at least a portion of their ancestors, might have been from. So whenever you're doing this, one thing to keep in mind is stick with the larger percentages, things that are 10 or 20 or 30, 40, 50%, because that is a significant amount and it's usually indicative of at least an ancestor or ancestry that's somewhat recent that shares that in common. However, when you're getting down and you're looking at things that are below 10%, and particularly things that are below 2 or 3%, well, even if the DNA was accurate in telling you what the ancestry was, 2 or 3% is going to tell you something that is several generations removed from you. And from a paper trail standpoint, you're getting on the fringes of what is genealogically possible. Now, since ethnicity and admixture results can't tell you everything, and because there's a lot of statistical analysis that goes into it, trying to figure out a connection based off a 2 or 3% reporting of ancestry is going to be near impossible unless you have a lot of other information to help support it. So let me give you an example, though, of how ethnicity results could help in genealogy. My wife's grandmother was adopted. We'll call her Mary. Now, Mary's mom died the day after she was born. So we know who her mother was, but she was a single woman, and it wasn't reported who her parents were, and we don't know who the dad was. So there's a lot of question as far as where this heritage was from. Now, there were a lot of different family legends, but one of them in particular was that Mary's father might have been African American or had African American heritage. Well, since my wife is only 2 generations removed from Mary and 3 generations removed from Mary's father, if there was a significant African American heritage, that should be showing up in DNA, even in my wife. More importantly, in my wife's aunts, who are 1 generation closer, it should also show up. So when we did DNA testing, one of the first things actually that we looked for is we looked for any sub-Saharan African heritage in my wife and my wife's aunt's DNA. We found none. Now, that doesn't completely rule out any African American heritage, particularly if it's back several generations. But as far as Mary's father having a significant, I'm talking here 25% or more African American heritage, it just is not genetically possible. So in that case, DNA ethnicity results were useful in discounting one of the family legends. So just because ethnicity results are not as useful as the DNA matching as far as genealogical problems does not mean that you can't use them for specific problems. You need to understand what it can do and what it can't do, and make sure you're staying within the realm of what the ethnicity results are actually telling you. If you have questions about your ethnicity results, or if you have a time where it was used to solve a genealogy problem, put it in the comments below, and we can talk about that.
Don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss another episode of Family History Fanatics.